The Mummies of St. Michan's Church, Ireland's darkest haunted secret. Imagine visiting an ordinary-looking church in the heart of Dublin, a place where tourists quietly admire centuries of Irish history, unaware that beneath the worn stone floor lies one of the most terrifying secrets in Europe. Hidden below the church are underground crypts filled with human bodies that have refused to decay for hundreds of years. Their skin still clings to their bones, their hair remains visible, and some still wear the expressions they had at the moment of death. This is not folklore or a Hollywood horror film. It is the chilling reality of St. Michan's Church, one of Ireland's most haunted locations. But according to those who have worked there, the greatest mystery isn't that the dead have remained perfectly preserved, it's that they may not always remain perfectly still. For more than 3 centuries, St. Michan's Church has stood quietly in the centre of Dublin, surrounded by busy streets, passing cars, and thousands of people who have no idea what rests beneath them. From the outside, the church appears peaceful, almost forgotten among the city's modern buildings. Yet below its foundations lies a maze of ancient stone crypts unlike any other in the world. Because of the unusually dry air trapped underground, the bodies buried there never decomposed naturally. Instead, they became mummies, preserved by nature itself. Historians consider the crypts an extraordinary archaeological treasure, while paranormal investigators believe the dry air has preserved something far more unsettling than human remains. The underground chambers are cold, silent, and unnaturally still. Visitors descend a narrow staircase into darkness, where thick brick walls absorb every sound. Old wooden coffins line the corridors, some sealed shut forever, others cracked open just enough to reveal the bodies resting inside. The silence is almost overwhelming. Every breath echoes through the tunnels. Every footstep seems to awaken something hidden beneath centuries of dust. Many visitors describe feeling watched the moment they enter, even though the only visible faces belong to the dead. Among all the preserved bodies, none is more famous than the giant known as the Crusader. Standing nearly 7 feet tall in life, his unusually long limbs and towering skeleton have fascinated historians for generations. His leathery skin remains stretched tightly across his bones, while his mouth hangs permanently open, exposing rows of darkened teeth. For decades, visitors believed touching his hand would bring good luck, and thousands reached into his coffin to shake the hand of a man who died centuries ago. But over time, stories began spreading that perhaps the old legend worked both ways, that every visitor who touched the mummy left something behind, and perhaps took something away with them as well. The church caretakers rarely spoke openly about the strange events that occurred after sunset. Most dismissed questions with nervous smiles, while others simply refused to discuss the crypts altogether. Yet among themselves, the stories remained remarkably consistent. They spoke of footsteps echoing through empty passageways long after the last visitor had left. They described hearing whispers that seemed to come from inside sealed coffins. Flashlights failed without explanation. Locked doors were found standing open the next morning. More than one caretaker admitted feeling a cold hand brush against their shoulder while completely alone underground. One particularly cold winter evening, an elderly caretaker stayed behind to complete his final inspection before locking the church for the night. He had worked there for nearly 20 years and considered himself immune to ghost stories. Lantern in hand, he slowly descended the worn stone staircase into the crypts. The familiar smell of ancient wood and dry stone surrounded him as he made his routine inspection. Every coffin appeared untouched. Every corridor remained silent. Yet something felt different. The air seemed heavier than usual, as though the darkness itself were watching him. As he approached the chamber where the Crusader rested, an unfamiliar sound echoed through the crypt. One heavy footstep. Then another. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. The caretaker stopped walking. His lantern trembled in his hands as he listened. The footsteps continued somewhere beyond the walls, each one impossibly heavy, each one drawing closer. He called out, assuming another worker had entered the crypts, but no voice answered. Only the footsteps continued, breaking the silence with terrifying patience. Gathering what little courage he had left, he entered the chamber housing the Crusader. His heart nearly stopped. The massive coffin stood open. It was empty. Only torn burial cloth remained where the enormous mummy had rested for centuries. The caretaker staggered backward, unable to understand what he was seeing. He had personally locked the crypt only hours earlier. No one had entered. No one had left. Yet somehow one of Ireland's most famous mummies had vanished without leaving a trace. Then, he heard breathing. Dry. Slow. Painfully close. He raised the lantern toward the corridor outside the chamber. At first, he saw nothing but darkness. Then a shape slowly emerged. A towering figure stepped into the faint light. Its body was unnaturally thin, wrapped in rotting strips of cloth. Its blackened skin clung tightly to its bones. Its jaw hung open exactly like the mummy inside the coffin. Empty eye sockets stared directly at him without blinking. It did not rush forward. It simply stood there, as though studying him, remembering him. The caretaker's body refused to move. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but terror rooted him to the cold stone floor. The figure slowly lifted one impossibly long arm. Its dried fingers curled toward him with unnatural precision. Then, in a voice that sounded like dead leaves scraping across stone, it whispered only 3 words. "You should not return." The lantern suddenly went out. The crypt disappeared into absolute darkness. The caretaker felt freezing air rush past his face. Then came another sound, not footsteps this time, but the unmistakable scraping of fingernails across ancient stone walls. The sound circled around him from every direction, growing louder with each passing second. He reached desperately for matches, but before he could relight the lantern, something brushed against the back of his neck. It was cold. Dry. And unmistakably human. He ran. Ignoring every turn in the maze, he sprinted blindly through the tunnels, crashing into walls and ancient coffins. Behind him echoed those same heavy footsteps, never faster, never slower, always keeping the exact same distance. It was as if whatever pursued him knew escape was impossible. Every corner revealed only more darkness. Every corridor looked identical. The crypt seemed to have become a prison with no exit. Finally, he spotted the staircase leading back toward the church. He raced upward, slammed the heavy wooden door shut behind him, and collapsed onto the church floor, gasping for breath. He waited several minutes before daring to look back. The crypt door remained closed. Everything was silent. When the church reopened the following morning, several workers returned underground together. The Crusader had somehow returned to his coffin exactly as visitors remembered him. His body rested peacefully inside, his mouth frozen open, his hand stretched toward anyone brave enough to touch it. But something was different. The layer of dust covering the crypt floor now contained a trail of enormous footprints. They began at the giant mummy's coffin. They climbed toward the staircase. And then they turned around and walked back. To this day, St. Michan's Church remains one of Ireland's most mysterious locations. Scientists continue studying its naturally preserved mummies, while historians focus on the remarkable conditions that prevented decay. Yet the stories told by caretakers, visitors, and investigators have never completely disappeared. Some still claim to hear footsteps beneath the church after dark. Others refuse to enter the crypts alone. And a few believe the greatest mystery isn't why the bodies never decayed. It's why they always seem to be exactly where they were before morning. So if you ever find yourself standing inside St. Michan's Church, staring down the staircase that leads into those ancient crypts, remember one simple rule. If you hear footsteps below, don't go looking for who made them.